रूपा कदा मह्यं ददाति सपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतापदकमलं श्रीगुरो वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपं साग्रजातां सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणा रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधाकृष्णपादान् सहगणा ललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिन्धु दीनबन्धु जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्ता राधाकान्ता नमस्तुते तप्त काञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धु एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे. So I seek the blessing of all the devotees assembled here. I got the news about this class yesterday night and could not get a chance to make the PPT, but I have the document through which we'll go. It has some purport section, and I'll cover those. Um, Actually, this chapter has been quite inspiring personally for me. I have read this chapter many more times before, and this chapter actually gives a lot of nice information, very inspiring information about the dynamics of dealing with Vaishnavas, like what is the right way of dealing with devotees and what is the wrong way, and what is the consciousness of the residents of spiritual world, Vaikuntha planets, how they're free from any of these anarthas like envy, greed, lust, anger, and all these things. So and also we see how the Lord actually personally take responsibility of action of his servants, of his devotees. So many things are covered in this chapter. And also one more important thing, we see like how the Kumaras, when they went to spiritual world and they smelled the tulsi which is offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, they actually developed the conception of the personal form of the Lord, although they were having the impersonal conception before. So many things are covered which are very interesting in this chapter, and that's why I like this chapter very much. And fortunately, by His grace, Shivas Pandit Prabhu mercy, like I'm somehow assigned to go over this chapter. So in the last chapter, in chapter 14, we covered how Diti was actually agitated, and she entered into like this state of pregnancy at the evening hours, where although Kashyapa Muni forbade her and told this not the auspicious time, and Lord Shiva and the demigods will not be pleased. So although that happened, but she still went ahead, and Kashyapa Muni told actually these two sons which who will be born will be demons, and they will be harassing devotees and all the living entities on this planet, and they will be killed by the Supreme Lord. So Diti could understand actually these will be demons who will be born, but she was still happy to know that they will be uh, uh, they will be able to, they will get a chance to be delivered by the Supreme Lord himself. So continuing this chapter, we'll see how because of the presence of these two demons who are going to be born, there was a lot of darkness in the material world, and the functioning of all the planets was stopped because of this darkness. The demigods approached Lord Brahma to make sense of what is happening in the world, and Lord Brahma actually gave the remote reason why this darkness has happened, about like what happened in the spiritual world and how this Jan Vijay were cursed to come into the material world, and they are the one who are going to be born here. So Lord Brahma basically give the lot of details about what is happening in the spiritual world. So we'll go over it. So start with the first verse. She Maitreya said, "My dear Vidura, Diti, the wife of sage Kashyapa, could understand that the sons within her womb would be a cause of disturbance to the demigods. As such, she continuously bore the powerful semen of Kashyapuni, which was meant to give trouble to others for 100 years." So, in the purport, Prabhupada mentions here that any sane person, man or woman, would not tolerate that not that devotees are being harassed and they're being in trouble. So Diti understood it and she actually waited for 100 years before she gave birth to these babies, because like when they're going to be born, they will basically going to harass the demigods. So she waited for that time. And going to next verse. By the force of the pregnancy of Diti, the light of sun and moon was impaired by all the planets, and the demigods of various planets, being disturbed by that force, asked the creator of the universe, Brahma, what is this expansion? What is this expansion of darkness in all the directions? So the demigods are approaching the creator of the universe, the secondary creator of the universe, that is Brahma, and asking why there is so much expansion of this darkness. And the purport Prabhupada mentions, it seems um, the modern scientific theory tells that there are many suns. All the stars are like the suns, and there are many suns in this universe. But from the Vedic scripture, Srimad Bhagavatam, uh, like it appears that only there is only one sun, and that is the source of light for all the planets. All the stars or other planets are just reflecting the light of that sun. And when the sun is covered, the one sun is covered, actually it the whole material world were covered with this darkness. Going to next. The fortunate demigod said, "O great one, just see this darkness, which you know very well, and which is causing us anxieties. Because the influence of time cannot touch you, there is nothing unmanifest before you." So the demigods are addressing Lord Brahma that like to see what, like they wanted to basically ask where is this expansion of darkness coming from, and like if he has any clue on that. And they're basically appreciating like or glorifying Lord Brahma that the like Lord Brahma is free from the influence of time. So this is interesting, like because we know that from Bhagavad Gita, like Lord Brahma also has a very big lifespan, but still he's still under the influence of time. But in the purport, Prabhupada mentions clarifies that Lord Brahma is actually non-different from the Supreme Lord in the sense that he is a representative of the Lord. The Supreme Personal Godhead energy in the form, the mode of passion, or incarnation of the Supreme Personal Godhead of the mode of passion actually takes the form of Lord Brahma. So in that way, that he is a representative or the secondary creator of the universe on behalf of the Lord. That way he's not influenced by this uh, the time potency of the Lord. Um, the purport Prabhupada mentioned the influence of time, which manifests the past, present, and future, cannot touch higher personalities like Brahma and other demigods. Um, Sometimes demigods and other sages who have attained such perfection called Trikalagya. So going to next verse. The gods, the O God of the demigods, sustainer of universe, head jewel of all demigods in other planets, you know the intention of all living entities in both the spiritual and material worlds. So here demigods are approaching Lord Brahma because he is the chief of the demigods, and they are addressing Brahma almost on the same footing as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because on behalf of the Supreme Lord, he is actually engaged into creating the whole universe. And that's why it's called secondary creator of the universe. So, empowered by the Supreme Lord, Lord Brahma also has uh, access to know about the everyone's what is going on in the mind and the heart of all living entities. Going next, original source of strength and scientific knowledge, all obeisances unto you. You have accepted the undifferentiated mode of passion from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. With the help of external energy, you are born of the unmanifested source, all obeisances unto you. Um, so demigods are offering their obeisances to Lord Brahma, that he is the source of strength and scientific knowledge. So the scientific knowledge are actually imparted to Lord Brahma in the beginning of the creation. In the first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, we hear Tene Brahma Hardaya Yadi Kave Muhyanti Sriya. So that the Supreme Lord actually has impregnated this knowledge, Vedic knowledge, to Lord Brahma, and empowered him to basically create the universe. Going next. O Lord, all these planets exist within yourself, and all living entity is generated from you. Therefore, you are the cause of this universe, and anyone who meditates upon you without deviation attains devotional service. So, the demigods are glorifying Lord Brahma, that like he's the source of the second. We know that he's the secondary creator, but demigods, for demigods, he's the source of the creation of this whole universe. And it is interesting to know that demigods are glorifying Lord Brahma, that if anybody meditates on Lord Brahma, then they attain devotional service. So like we can discuss about this point, like how meditating on Lord Brahma actually one attains devotional service. But my understanding is like we uh, we know that Lord Brahma is the original spiritual master. From like Lord Supreme Lord empowers him to give the Vedas, and from Brahma the whole sampradaya is coming from Brahma, Narada, Vyasa, and like that. So if somebody um, approach Lord Brahma in a reverential mood and learn from him, then one can actually get connected to Supreme Lord. Like Lord Brahma, in that sense, is a transparent via medium to get connected to Supreme Lord, and one can attain devotional service by following the teaching of Lord Brahma. So, going to next verse, there is no defeat in this material world for person who control mind and senses by controlling the breathing process, and who is therefore experienced and mature mystics. This is because by such perfection of yoga they have attained your mercy. So, in this verse, like demigods are telling to Lord Brahma that by this yoga process, by controlling breathing process, one can control mind and senses. So, same thing Prabhupada actually mentioning that this yoga process, the ultimate of yoga is not just controlling breathing process. These are just various tools. Ultimately, like real purpose of all these performances, that one should be able to control mind and senses, so that one can actually absorb one's attention on the presence of the Supreme Lord in the one's heart. So um, that is the qualification of receiving the grace or benediction from the Supreme Lord, that one should be able to control one's mind and senses. One cannot attain the mercy of the Lord without controlling mind and senses. So I was remembering this one verse from second chapter, or in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna tells, Shraddhavan labte jnanam tatpara samyatendriya jnanam labdha param santi machrenanti gacchati. So the qualification to attain this wisdom or knowledge, Krishna tells, is one should have faith, and one should be able to control one's mind and senses. Samyatendriya. And Prabhupada mentions how a person engaged in devotional service controls, like basically has all these senses automatically controlled, because they're engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. And when the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, there is no possibility of engaging into material activities. So we see that in the life of many of the exalted devotees, even now on this planet, we see the many devotees are traveling all over the globe, various planets, various countries, and they are fully absorbed, their mind and intelligence fully absorbed how to give Krishna consciousness to others. And uh, so there's no time for engaging into any sense gratification material activities, because they're fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. So Srila Prabhupada also mentioning, like, devotee of the Supreme Lord are not afraid of any condition on this material world. For them, everything, everywhere, they're actually engaged in service. So they're not afraid of sending to hell or heaven. Narayana para sarve na kutasyan bibhyate sarg apavargesu apitulya darshana. That they're not afraid of hell or heaven. Everywhere they're actually engaged in the service of the Lord. Going to next verse. All living entities within the universe are conducted by the Vedic directions, as a bull is directed by the rope attached to its nose. No one can violate the rules laid down in the Vedic literatures. To the chief person who has controlled the Vedas, we offer our respects. So demigods are offering their respect to Supreme, to Lord Brahma, and they're telling, like, this Lord Brahma is has actually the Vedic literature is emanating from Lord Brahma, and he was imparted this Vedic knowledge by the Supreme Lord, and then he has given to all the demigods. And all living entities within this universe are regulated by the injection of the Vedic literatures. So in the purport, Prabhupada mentions the conditioned soul has come to this material world for sense gratification, and those activities has to be regulated by the injection of Vedic literature. Sense gratification is like the salt, and too much and too little of the salt can make the food stuff not very palatable. So one should take that in the right quantity. So the condition shows in the material world has to be regulated with the direction of the Vedic literatures. Otherwise, they will be put into more miserable condition of life. And these Vedic, the injection of the Vedic literature are not coming from somebody, human being or demigods, but it is directly coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and is passed down through the disciplic succession, starting from Lord Brahma. Going next, the demigods prayed to Brahma, "Please look upon us mercifully, for we have fallen into a miserable condition. Because of the darkness, all our work has been suspended." So, because the sun was covered by this influence of these two demons who are going to be born, like all the planets were covered with darkness, and all their work was suspended. So we know, like, even here, we anything we do is we plan by time. We plan by the AM, PM, like morning, afternoon, and evenings. And here, like, there was a consistent darkness. It was just all night, and that's why they lost the sense of time, and like, many of their activities got suspended. So Prabhupada is mentioning here, in the North Pole or the South Pole, there is no division of day and night, and the sunlight, and similarly there are places where the sunlight does not approach different parts of the planet. So in these situations, very difficult to organize activities, and that is the condition, like, happened in all these planets when the sun was covered with darkness. Next, as the fuel overloads a fire, so the embryo created by the semen of Kashyapa in the womb of Diti has caused complete darkness throughout the universe. Going next. Sri Maitreya said, "Thus Lord Brahma, who is understood by transcendental vibration, tried to satisfy the demigods, being pleased with their words of prayer." So now Lord Brahma addressing the demigods, My four, Lord Brahma said, "My four sons, Sanak, Sanatan, Sanandan, and Sanat Kumar, who were born from my mind, are your predecessors. Sometimes they travel throughout the material and spiritual skies without any definite desire." So, to make demigods aware of what is happening, Lord Brahma actually uh, describe the incident which happened in this Vaikuntha planet, spiritual world, which actually is the remote cause of what is actually happening right now. So Lord Brahma start with the uh, like the journey of the four Kumaras to the spiritual world, and we'll discuss like what has happened because of that, and um, why the darkness is there. So, and Lord Brahma tells these four Kumaras are actually your predecessors, in the sense like they were the first uh, the first sons of Brahma. Even before Lord Shiva or Narad Muni was born, these four Kumaras were born, and they chose to remain like 5 year uh, childrens. And they, although they are the oldest living entities in this universe, but they look like the small childrens all the time. Um, Going to next. So as Brahma continues addressing the demigods, after thus traveling all over the universes, they also entered into the spiritual sky, for they were freed from all material contamination. In the spiritual sky, there are many spiritual planets known as Vakuntas, which are residents, which are the residents of this Supreme Personality of Godhead and His pure devotees, and are worshipped by the residents of all the material planets. So Lord Brahma tells like these four Kumaras were going in all different places in the material world, and they without any definite desire. Like they're traveling. Usually, people travel to one country to another country in the sake of trying to earn some money or get something and have some desire fulfilled. But these four Kumaras were just traveling without any definite desire, just seeing the whole creation of the Lord. And after going all over the universe, they entered into spiritual sky, which are called Vakuntas. So these Vakuntas come from the word Kuntas means miseries, and people in the material world are filled with fear, anxiety, miseries, and all those things. But there is a section, there is above this material world, there is a sphere or these places which are actually beyond these miseries. Um and these are called Vaikunthas, means without any miseries. And the miseries are there in the material world because everything is temporary. Um so in the purport Bhagavan mentioned here, because of the accepting a temporal abode in the material world, they are full of the people in the material world are full of anxiety because of the situation in the material world is temporary. But in the spiritual world, everything is permanent. It's like there is no birth, death, old age, disease in the spiritual world, and that's why there is no anxiety. And uh, like in Bhagavad Gita, also Krishna mentions in the 8th chapter, like how everything in this material world, from highest planet down to lowest, everything is created and enlightened again. But there is a aprayamitasthanya, no, that one. Um, भूत ग्रामं सेवं भूत्वा भूत्वा पुल्यति रात्रगमे वशे पात्र पवन्तेर आगमे परस्तस्मात् भावन्यो व्यक्त अव्यक्त सनातन यस सर्वेषु भूतेषु नश्यत्सु न विनश्यति. So Krishna tells like beyond this created and enlightened material world, beyond this material world which is created and annihilated, there is another place which is never annihilated. When all this universe is annihilated, that part remains as it is. So that's part is called Vaikunthas, or where there is no miseries. So these Kumaras entered there. Continuing, Lord Brahma said, in the Vaikuntha planets, all the residents are similar in the form to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They all engage in the devotional service to the Lord without desires for sense gratification. So Lord Brahma tells about the state of like what is the consciousness of the resident of Vaikunthas. They're all engaged into devotional service of the Lord, and uh, they're they're not having this desire for sense gratification, because they're getting the higher taste in rendering transcendental loving service to the Lord. So they're not attracted towards personal sense gratification. in the material world, like the residents of the material world. Going next, in the Vaikuntha planets is the is the supreme personality of Godhead, who is the original person who can be understood through the Vedic literature. He is full of uncontaminated mode of goodness, which with no place for passion or ignorance. He contributes religious progress to the devotees. So in the spiritual world, there is no traces of mode of passion, ignorance, and even the mode of goodness is free from any tinges of ignorance and passion. We know there are three modes of material nature: ignorance, passion, and goodness. And the goodness is higher than passion and ignorance. But in the material world, even the goodness has some traces of passion, ignorance. However, in spiritual world, there is pure goodness without any traces of this passion, ignorance, and that is called Suddha Sattva. Means this is beyond just the goodness from material sense, and it is free from any traces. So that is the quality of life in the spiritual world, and that is the state in which, like, the Supreme Lord lives in the Suddha Sattva state. Going next, in those Vaikuntha planets, there are many forests which are very auspicious. In those forests are the trees. In those forests, the trees are desert trees, and in all seasons they are filled with flowers and fruits, because everything in the Vaikuntha planets is spiritual and personal. So it is interesting to know this information about what is there in the spiritual world. This kind of information is not available anywhere in the any textbook, or cannot be found by through our pratyaksh praman, by our direct sense perception. We cannot have this information what is there in the spiritual world. Even what we speak of spiritual world, difficult to know what all is there in the material world. But through the source of Shrimad Bhagavatam, we can know actually what is going on in the spiritual world. uh, there are trees, and these trees are actually kalprikshas. They're desire fulfilling trees. In the material world, we don't see these trees. Like, we see if mango tree is going to give mango, and other trees are going to give their fruit. But the trees in the spiritual world, anything one can get. So, and the resident of the Vaikuntha planets, they take the paraphernalia from these trees which are engaged in the service of the Lord. And it's said that all the flowers and fruits of all the seasons are available there, and everything is personal and spiritual. So the impersonalist, they think that after one is liberated, then one enters into formless state. But here there is information like they have form, they have these varieties in the spiritual world. There are trees and different flowers, and they are all personal. So although they have form, they are spiritual, and the trees and the man have form, and because all of them, all the differently formed, are spiritual, there is no difference between them. So means we see a big difference here um, between the trees and the human beings. They say like trees cannot walk, cannot talk, cannot have their consciousness very much covered over. But in the spiritual world, everything is spiritual, in the sense everything is conscious, that they are actively rendering service to the Lord in different ways. So everything is in their sarupa, or like original constitutional position, and everything is actively serving the Lord. Going next, in the Vaikuntha planets, the inhabitants fly in their airplanes, accompanied by their wives, and eternally sing of the character and activities of the Lord, which are always devoid of inauspicious qualities. While singing the glories of the Lord, they deride even the presence of the blooming Madhvi flowers, which are fragrant and laden with honey. Again, more information is given about the spiritual world here. uh, that the inhabitants, they're also, they have this family, they have husband or wife, and they're also traveling in their celestial airplanes all over the spiritual world. But their engagement is not, they're not going for some sense gratification, or they're not bewildered by this pride or intoxication, or they're not uh, losing touch with like their own self, and what is their they're not in forgetfulness of their real identity as the servant of the Lord, and they're going all over the spiritual world singing the glories of the Lord. So in the purport Paul mentioning here, they consider the glorification of the Lord more important than their own sense gratification. And the Vaikuntha planets, there's no question of sense gratification. So, um, so in the verse it tells like why they're singing the glories of the Lord, and they're the the air there is very fragrant, but they even not they deride this fragrant air which is filled with the fragrance of the Madhvi flower. They deride even those things because they are so absorbed into, they're getting higher pleasure into glorifying, uh, engaged in glorifying the service of the Lord, glorifying the Lord. They're actually getting much more higher taste. They consider glorification of the Lord is more important than their own sense gratification. The Vaikuntha planets, there is no question of sense gratification. To smell the fragrance of blooming flowers is certainly very nice, but it is simply for sense gratification. So, the inhabitants of the Vaikuntha give first preference to the service of the Lord and not to their own sense gratification. Serving the Lord in the transcendental love yields such transcendental pleasure that in comparison the sense gratification is counted as insignificant. Going to next verse. When the king of bees hums in a high pitch, singing the glories of the Lord, there is a temporary lull in the noise of the pigeon and the cuckoos, crane, chakravaka, the swan, the parrots, the partridge, and the peacock. Such transcendental birds stop their own singing simply to hear the glories of the Lord. So here we see like there are so many birds. There are different kind of birds are mentioned here: parrot, swan, chakravakas, crane, cuckoos, and especially the bees are mentioned here. And these bees hum in a particular high pitch, and they sing the glory of the Lord. So these bees are not just ordinary bees, but these are the great sages who are taking the form, and they are always engaged into serving the Lord by glorifying the Lord. And other when the bees hums, and because it's very pleasing to the Lord, other birds actually stop their um, they don't like they basically they focus on hearing the bees, and uh, they don't chirp, or there's no like there's no competition in the spiritual world that one bird is humming and then other birds also start speaking that I speak better than you, something like that. So there is no question of envy or competition in the spiritual world, because everything is in perfect harmony. In the material world, even the ass enjoys his sound vibration, but in the Vaikuntha planets, even the such nice birds like peacock, chakravaka, cuckoos prefer to hear the vibration of the glories of the Lord from the bees. So the principle of devotion service, beginning with hearing and chanting, is very prominent in the Vaikuntha planets. We see that even the birds are engaged into chanting, and others are engaged into hearing. While the bees are chanting the glories of the Lord, others are hearing. So this Shaunam and Kirtanam is going in the spiritual world also. Next, actually not only going, but it's the one mentions here is prominent, is very prominent in the Vaikuntha planets. Although the flowering plants like Mandara, Kunda, Kurbaka, Utpala, Champaka, Arna, Punanga, Naga, Nagakeshara, Pakula, Lily, Parijata are full of transcendental fragrance, they are still conscious of the austerities performed by Tulsi, for Tulsi is given special preference by the Lord, who garlands himself with Tulsi flower. So as we saw, like among all these um, birds, the bees are important because they are always engaged into humming the glories of the Lord. Similarly, among the uh, plants, various flowering plants, there are many nice flower-bearing plants, but they are conscious of the tulsi. Although it may not have flowers, but it's very much is very special to the Supreme Lord, and it has performed austerities and is very auspicious. So, and Lord is actually garlanded with tulsi flowers, and this tulsi is offered to the feet of the Lord. So all the plants are actually very conscious about the tulsi plant. So Prabhupada mentions sometimes atheistic people, they don't understand these things, and they think like, what is the use of watering tulsi plants, and why not just water eggplant, because eggplant gives some food or fruit, and the tulsi doesn't have a flower. So Prabhupada mentioned here, these foolish creatures unacquainted with devotional service sometimes play havoc with the education of people in general. Means even the spiritual world, the other flower bearing plants are conscious about tulsi, but the people who don't have the sense of devotional service, they will not understand the importance of tulsi plant. So Bhopal mentioned the most important thing about the spiritual world is that there is no envy among devotees there. This is true even among the flowers who are conscious of the greatness of tulsi. The Vaikuntha world, entered by the four Kumaras, even the birds and the flowers are conscious of the service of the Lord. So we are seeing here like how the resident of the Vaikuntha planets are traveling like with their consorts, and but they are not agitated by the lust and other sense gratification. And here there is no envy. So these kind of details and information are available here in Shrimad Bhagavatam. It's quite interesting because other places, even Bible, Jesus tells like in my father's abode there are many mansions, and there is no need of sun and moon. Similarly, other places are like description is given, but this level of details are not available anywhere. And interestingly, in 14th chapter, Prabhupada mentions here when this verse comes, "Na tad bhashito suryo na sansuko na pavaka yad gatva na nivartante tad dham paramam mama." The supreme abode of mind is not illuminated by sun and moon, nor by fire or electricity. Those who reach it never returns to this material world. So in the purport, Prabhupada mentions here that one can actually become the associate of the Lord in the liberated state and enter in the spiritual world, and one can actually enjoy eternal life of bliss and knowledge. So that is the possibility Prabhupada is mentioning. And next line Prabhupada mentioned, one should be captivated by this information, and one should desire to transfer himself to the eternal world and extricate himself from the false reality, false reflection of reality. And how one can do is by learning how to become Krishna conscious in association of devotees. So Prabhupada mentioned one should be captivated by this information. Means if we know more information, will definitely will be more attracted to that. And these details about the plants and the residents, it's quite interesting to know. Next, the inhabitants of the Vaikunthas travel in the airplanes made by lapis lazuli, emerald, emerald and gold. Although crowded by their consort, who have large hips and beautiful smiling faces, they cannot be stimulated by the passion, by their mirth and beautiful charms. So in the Vaikuntha planets, we just discussed this how like the resident of Vaikuntha planets are many times more beautiful than the people in the material world, but still they are not contaminated by this lust. The men are so absorbed in the Krishna consciousness that beautiful bodies of women cannot attract them. In other words, there is no enjoyment of the there is enjoyment of the opposition of opposite sex, but there is no sexual relationship. The resident of Vaikuntha have a better standard of pleasure, so there is no need of sex pleasure. Going next, the lives of Vaikuntha planet Vaikuntha planets are as beautiful as the goddess of fortune herself, such transcendently beautiful ladies, their hands playing with lotus and their leg bangles tinkling, are sometimes seen sweeping the marble walls, which are bedecked at intervals with golden borders in order to receive the grace of the Supreme Personal Godhead. So these ladies are actually engaged into uh, cleaning or sweeping the marble walls, although there is no question of dust or dirt there, but still they're engaged in these services so that they're eager to receive the grace of the Lord. And Prabhupada quotes Brahma Samhita where it mentions Lakshmi Sahasra Satsambram Samvya Manam Govindamadi Pusham Daham Bhajami. There are the millions, trillions of goddesses of fortune they who reside in Vaikuntha planets are always engaged into various service of the Lord. So they are not exactly the consort of the Lord, but they are wives of the devotees, and they are engaged in the service of the Lord to attain the grace of the Lord. And in the next purport, Prabhupada mentioned like Lakshmi is called Chanchala, who does not stay in one place, but she stays always, remain satisfied and happy at the lotus feet of the Lord. And people like Ravana who are demonic, they want to take Lakshmi or Sita away from the Lord, but that when the Lakshmi is taken away from the Lord, like she actually causes the destruction. His kingdom was vanished, and his family and kingdom was vanished. Uh, and instead of being prosperous, he actually was destroyed because he tried to have like the Lakshmi or Sita away from the Lord. Next, the goddesses of fortune worship the Lord by their own gardens, by offering tulsi in their sorry. The goddesses of fortune worship the Lord in their own gardens by offering tulsi leaves on the coral-paved banks of transcendental reservoirs of water. While offering worship to the Lord, they can see on the water the reflection of their beautiful faces with raised noses, and it appears that they have become more beautiful because of the Lord's kissing their faces. Going next. It is very much regrettable that unfortunate person do not discuss the description of the Vaikuntha planets, but engage in the topics which are unworthy to hear and which bewilders one's intelligence. Those who give up the topics of Vaikuntha and take to talks of the material world are thrown into darkest region of ignorance. So people not discussing the description of the Vaikuntha planets are bewildered by many other topics. And Pawad mentioned the most unfortunate persons are the impersonalists because they not understand the very gittedness of the spiritual world. And the word here is mentioned ku katha mati ghano. The intelligence are bewildered by unworthy words. Um, Next paragraph was mentioned. It is stressed that people who try to discuss understand the real spiritual nature of the spiritual sky and Vaikuntha are fortunate. Um, and if they are and if when the people become fortunate, they become interested to go back home, back to Godhead. And unless people are can understand about there is a spiritual world and they're resident in the spiritual world and how they're living, they will continue to rot in the material world, and they're just interested in the topics of politics and economic development without having the information of the spiritual world. So one can actually gain fortune just by discussing these topics. One can get attraction to go back to God just by understanding the possibilities in the spiritual world. Next, Lord Brahma said, "My dear demigods, the human form of life is of such importance that we also desire to have such life. For in human form, one can attain the perfect religious truths and knowledge. If one is if one in this human form of life can does not understand the Supreme Personal Godhead and his abode, it is to be understood that he is very much affected by the influence of external energy." So Brahmas glorify um the opportunity one have is in human form of life, and condemns very vehemently the condition of human being who does not take this opportunity and does not take interest in the Supreme Personal Godhead and his transcendental abode. Even Lord Brahma is desiring a human form life because it gives a chance to uh, go directly to spiritual world. Um, like in the purport, it's interesting purport mentioning here that it's not possible to go back to Godhead in one lifetime, but human form of life one can actually at least understand the goal of life and begin Krishna consciousness. So it seems Prabhupada mentioned like one cannot just start Krishna consciousness and just go to back to Godhead just one lifetime. It may take multiple lifetimes to reach Vaikuntha planets, but one can actually at least begin to know the goal of life and just starts one journey towards the spiritual world. And human form life is a great boon because it's like a suitable boat by which one can cross the ocean of nations, and spiritual master is considered like the expert captain to navigate this boat, and the scriptures are like favorable winds which help one to in the journey. So those in human form life has all these facilities, and if one does not take advantage of this is certainly committing suicide. Going next, persons whose bodily feature does not change in ecstasy. uh, uh, yeah, so I'll be going a little faster now. Persons whose bodily features change in ecstasy and who breathe heavily and perspire due to hearing the glories of the Lord are promoted to the kingdom of God. Even though they do not care for meditation and other austerities, the kingdom of God is above the material universe and it is desired by Brahma and other demigods. So here you mention that those who are in ecstasy of chanting the holy name of the Lord, they don't have to follow the yoga and meditation, many other things, because they're so much absorbed, and they have got the qualification to enter in these higher planets. So in the purport Prabhupada mentioned 12th chapter, Krishna tells about the qualities one should have to approach the the Vaikuntha planets, and one should cultivate these qualities. And then Krishna, like Prabhupada mentioned, like that if one chant the holy name and one's heart does not melt, then then one is actually the heart is not melting because of the offenses one is uh, committing while chanting holy names. And there are 10 offenses. Prabhupada gives the detail of 10 offenses and how to overcome these offenses. Next, thus the great sages Sanak, Sanatan, Sanandan, Sanat Kumar, upon reaching the above mentioned Vaikuntha in the spiritual world by the dint of their mystic yoga performance, perceived unprecedented happiness. They found the spiritual skies was illuminated by highly decorated airplanes piloted by the best devotees of Vaikuntha and was predominated by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. After passing through the six entrances of the Vaikuntha Puri's Lord's residence without feeling astonishment at all decorations, they saw the seventh gate, two shining beings of the same age, armed with mace and adorned with very valuable jewelry, earring, diamonds, helmets, and garlands. So they, as a small child, they're just crossing all these six gates and entered seventh gate where they saw these two shining beings of the same age. The two doormans were garlanded with fresh flower which attracted the intoxicated bees and which was placed around their necks and between four blue arms. From their arched eyebrows and discontented nostrils and reddish eyes they appeared somewhat agitated. The great sages headed by Sanaka had opened doors everywhere. They had no idea of hours and theirs. With open minds, they entered the seventh door out of their own will, just as they had passed through the six other doors, which were made of gold and diamonds. The four the sages who had nothing to cover their bodies but the atmosphere, looked only 5 years old, even though they were the oldest of all living creatures and has realized the truth of the self. But when the porters, who happened to possess a disposition quite unpalatable to the Lord, saw the sages, they blocked their way with their staffs, despising their glories, although the sages did not deserve such treatment at their hands. When the Kumaras, although by far the fittest persons, were thus forbidden entrance by the two chief doorkeepers of Sri Hari, while other divinities looked on, their eyes suddenly turned red because of the anger due to the great eagerness to see their most beloved master Sri Hari, the personal Godhead. So they had this great eagerness to see the Lord, and when they were checked, they immediately the anger arised in them. And in the Purport Pavan mentioned, this anger is the younger brother of the desire. So they had this desire, and when it was forbidden, they felt angry. But the difference between the anger of the ordinary person and that of liberated person is that uh, ordinary person become angry when their desire for sense gratification is not fulfilled. However, liberated persons like Kumaras, they were angry because they were restricted in the discharge of their service to the Supreme Lord. Next, the sages said, who are these two persons who have developed such a discordant mentality, even though they are posted in the service of the Lord in the highest position, are expected to have developed the same qualities as the Lord? How are these two persons living in the Vaikuntahs? Where is the possibility of enemies coming into the kingdom of the Lord? The personal Godhead has no enemy. How could who could be envious of him? Probably these two persons are impostors because they suspect others to be like themselves. The Vaikuntha worlds, there is complete harmony between the resident and the Supreme Personal Godhead, just as there is complete harmony within space between the big and the small skies. Why then is there is seed of fear in this field of harmony? The two persons are dressed like inhabitants of Vaikuntha, but wherefrom can their wherefrom can their disharmony come into existence? Therefore, let us consider how these two do contaminated persons should be punished. The punishment should be apt, for this benefit can eventually be bestowed upon them. Since they find duality in the existence of Vaikuntha life, their contaminant should be removed from this place to the material world, where living entities have three kind of enemies. So these Kumaras are contemplating about sending these Jain Vijay, the doorkeepers, to the material world, and the material world living entities are harassed by these enemies, three enemies. And in the purport Prabhupada mentioned these enemies are lust, greed, and anger, Kama, Krodha, and Lobha. When the doormen of Vaikuntha Loka, who were certainly devotees of the Lord, found that they are going to be cursed by the Brahmanas, they at once became very much afraid and fell down at the feet of Brahmanas in great anxiety. For a Brahmana's curse cannot be counteracted by any weapon. So this Jay and Vijay, the doorkeeper, they understood the gravity of their offense, like their offense, they understood, and they basically became repentant here. After being cursed by the sages, the doorman said, "It's quite apt that you have punished us for neglecting the neglect to respect sages like you, but we pray that due to your compassion at our repentance, the illusion of forgetting the Supreme Personal Godhead does not come upon us as we go progressively downwards." So they basically were repentant, and they kind of requested these Brahmanas, like for Kumaras, that although they are going to material world, they should not forget the Supreme Lord, because in the material world, especially in the lower species of life, is like the forgetfulness of the Lord is very prominent. So they were afraid of this condition of forgetting the Lord. At that very moment, the Lord, who is called Padmanabha because of the lotus grown from his navel, and who is the delight of righteous, learned learned about the insult offered by his own servant to the saints. Accompanied by his spouse, the goddess Fortune, they went to the spot on those very feet sought by recluses and the great sages. The sages, headed by Sanagrishi, saw the Supreme Personal Godhead Vishnu, who was formerly visible only within their hearts in their static trance, and had now actually become visible to their eyes. As he came forward, accompanied by his own associates bearing all paraphernalia, such as an umbrella, a chamara fan, a white bunches of hair moved very gently like two swans, and due to their favorable breeze, the pulse garlanding the umbrella also moved, like drops of nectar falling from the white full moon or ice melting due to gust of wind. The Lord is the reservoir of all pleasure. His auspicious presence is meant for everyone's benediction. His affectionate, smiling, and glancing touch the core of the heart. The Lord's beautiful bodily color is blackish, and his broad chest is the resting place of Goddess of Fortune, who glorifies the entire spiritual world, the summit of all heavenly planets. Thus it appeared that the Lord was personally spreading the beauty and good fortune of the spiritual world. He was adorned with a girdle that shone brightly on the yellow cloth covering his large hips, and he wore a garland of fresh flower which was distinguished by humming bees. His lovely wrist was graced with bracelets, and he rested one of his hands on the shoulder of Garuda, his carrier, and twirled a lotus with another hand. His countenance was distinguished by cheeks that enhanced the beauty of his alligator-shaped pendants, which outshone lighting. His nose was prominent, his head was covered with a gem-studded crown, a charming necklace hung from his stout arms, and his neck was adorned with the gem known as known by the name Kaustubha. The exquisite beauty of Narayana, being many times magnified by the intelligence of his devotees, were so attractive that defeated the pride of goddess Fortune in being the most beautiful. My dear demigods, uh, my dear demigods, the Lord was thus manifested himself, is worshipped by me, by Lord Shiva, and by all of you. The sages regarded him with unsated eyes and joyously bowed their head at his lotus feet. When the breeze carrying the aroma of tulsi leaves from the toes of the lotus feet of the personality of Godhead entered the nostril of those sages, they experienced a change both in the body and in mind, even though they were attracted to the impersonal Brahman understanding. This is a very interesting verse. I'll just read the verse here. Tasya nayanasya padar तस्यारविन्दनयनस्य पदारविन्दा किञ्जल्कमिश्रा तुलसीमकरान्दवायु अन्तर्गता सविवरेण चकार तेषां संक्षोभम् अक्षरजुष्टमपि चित्ततन्तुः. Says the breeze carrying the aromas of tulsi leaves. Uh, yeah, I'll be reading. From the toes of the lotus feet of the Supreme Personal God enter the nostrils of those sages. They experience change both in the body and the mind, even though they were attached to the impersonal Brahman understanding. The Lord's beautiful face appeared to them like inside of a blue lotus, and the Lord's smile appeared to a blossoming jasmine flower. After seeing the face of the Lord, the sages were fully satisfied and when they wanted to see him further, they looked upon the nails of his lotus feet, which resembled rubies. Thus they viewed the Lord's transcendental bodies again, and so finally achieved the meditation on the Lord's personal feature. This is the form of the Lord which is meditated upon the followers of the yoga process, and it is pleasing to the yogis in meditation. It's not imaginary but factual, as proved by the great yogis. The Lord is full in eight kind of achievements, and for others these achievements are not possible in full perfection. Kumara said, "O dear Lord, you are not manifested rascals, even though you are seated within the heart of everyone. But as far as we are concerned, we see you face to face. Although you are unlimited, the statements we have heard about you from our father Brahma through the years have now been actually factually realized by your kind appearance. We know that you are the supreme absolute truth, the personal Godhead who manifests transcendental form in the uncontaminated mode of pure goodness. This transcendental eternal form of your personality can be understood only by your mercy, through the unflinching devotional service by great sages whose heart has been purified by devotional way. Persons who are very expert and most intelligent in understanding things as they are, engage in hearing the narration of the auspicious activities and pastime of the Lord, who are worth chanting and worth hearing. Such persons do not care even the highest material benediction, namely the liberation, to say nothing of the other less important benediction like material happiness and heavenly kingdoms. O Lord, we pray that you let us be born in the hellish condition of life just as long as our heart and mind are engaged in the service of your lotus feet. Our words are made beautiful just by speaking of your activities, just as tulsi leaves are beautified when offered to your lotus feet. And as long as our ears are always filled with the chanting of the transcendental qualities. So here we see that these four Kumaras, they actually thought that they have done wrong mistake. There's some done some mistake in cursing this Jay and Vijay. They should not have cursed them out of anger, and that's why they were thinking like now probably Lord has come here and he's also angry with us as well, and they thought like Lord is going to kind of punish them. So they are also kind of praying to the Lord that although we may go to lower hellish condition, let us always be engaged in service of the Lord and not put into forgetfulness. O Lord, we therefore offer our respectful obeisance unto you, your eternal form as Supreme Personal Godhead, which you have so kindly manifested before us. Your supreme eternal form cannot be seen by unfortunate less intelligent person, but we are so satisfied in our mind and vision to see it. I think so. The four sages, they saw the supreme Lord form, which they have seen only in the meditation. Now is coming in front of them, so they were felt so much obliged and offered their respectful obeisances again and again. So that concludes this chapter, chapter 15. Next we can go into discussion probably. So, Shivashwani Prabhuji, like, should we go ahead and take comments or question?
Please, thank you so much, Govind Prabhu, for the nice presentation. Yeah, you can ask the devotee.
Okay, Prabhuji. I'll just go from left to right. Gandharuka Mataji, do you have any comments or question?
Prabhuji,
Yes, yes, Mataji.
sorry, we are in Houston now. Uh,
Okay.
if we have to go, I mean, if it's okay, can we do
Yeah, yeah,
first?
please. Yeah, yes, Mataji. Sorry, actually, I should have gone to you
No, no,
first.
no, no, no. That's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have any. In one question I had and one comment, as you said, it
Uh,
was little when I was reading the chapter. It was like they were
yeah.
says that glorifying Brahma so much, right?
Yes.
I mean, I was thinking there are some people who consider demigods as the all in all, and such prayers in Bhagavatam might mislead them. I was just thinking.
Mhm.
But Brahma was so nicely glorifying the Supreme Lord when he was speaking. If at all, we read that, the picture would be clear. And that was just a comment. And one question I had is in one of the verses we were talking about the trees and and when we say the human, the form is, I mean, it's all the same in the spiritual world because it is personal and spiritual. I didn't
Yes.
understand what he means by being personal for a tree, like in the sense like the tree will like bend to give flowers, or tree will grow whenever Krishna wants to grow. Like I couldn't what you call you know frame a picture in my mind like what is being personal in a tree.
Yeah. Uh, my understanding, Mataji, here is that the trees, they they are as conscious as human beings, like those who have the form of human beings or those who has the form of the tree, both are have this same quality of consciousness. Or like in the material world, the trees, their consciousness is very much covered over with so much modes, and
Mm.
human beings is little more like consciousness more uncovered. But in the spiritual world, the trees and the plants and like the human beings, they have grown like fully blossomed consciousness, where they're very much uh, aware, conscious, and conscious about their service they are rendering. Like when Krishna is, I think, moving in the Bhagavatam, there's a description when Krishna is moving, then these trees were laden with the fruits and flowers. They were kind of bowing down. So Krishna tells Balaram that see how these trees are best of all living entities, because their existence is meant for all other living entities, and they're kind of offering obeisances to you, Balaram. Like Krishna telling to Balaram, but actually they are offering obeisance to Supreme Lord. That they're very conscious when Lord is passing by. They're providing the shade, and they're providing the fruits and flowers. So they're personally offering it. It's not mechanical, or it's
Okay.
not without any conscious intention. That's my understanding on it. Yeah,
Okay. Thank you. It is not like a automatic cycle like spring, summer, winter. Like,
correct.
okay. Okay. Thank you,
And the
Prabhu.
Kalpavriksha trees, like they can actually give any paraphernalia which is needed for the service of the Lord. Uh,
Actually, it is both, because uh, in spiritual world the trees uh, are personal and very much having a unique relationship with Krishna, but at the same time they act like trees, and they are whenever there are like spring seasons they bear flowers just to give their unique nature. But apart from that, as Sri Govinda Prabhu rightly pointed out, there are also the Kalpavriksha trees. They can give anything what they want, but at the same time, it's not like because they can give anything they want, they just stop bearing flowers or stop bearing leaves or shedding leaves. So all those things of the trees will be there, but everything to enhance and attract the pastimes of Krishna.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Prabhu. Thank you, Shivas Prabhu. Thank you, Govind Dutta Prabhu. I am done. We will give to Govind Charan.
Thank you very much. Govind Shankar.
Thank
Yes,
you for a wonderful class and transporting us to the kingdom of God. It was really very nice for you. One particular verse that I really liked, I just want to have a comment. This is verse 18, how when the king of the beast hums in a high pitch,
Mhm.
there's a temporary lull in the noise of the pigeon, cuckoo, crane, such transcendental birds stop their own singing simply to hear the glories of the Lord. So that was very, very touching.
Yes,
Uh,
very.
as Prabhupada says in the material world, even in it's, you get to hear his own vibration. So, like in the books, like Stephen Covey and other books, they say a person's name is most important. So you should use it more often. So that is a law of this material world, where everybody is interested in their own self glorification. Whereas spiritual world, they stop their own vibrations to hear others.
Correct.
It establishes such a wonderful principles for us to follow.
Yes, very.
That was very nice.
Thank you for the comments. Very important, and we can apply that in our life. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ravi. That's the only comment, and thank you again for a wonderful class. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Govind Shankar. Wish you a nice, happy Sankirtan day.
Thank you, sir.
Hare Krishna.
So next week, sorry, just before they go, next week probably there won't be a class. We'll I think there's a long weekend and many devotees are either traveling to Sadhu Sangha or so next week there may not be a class, and then we'll discuss later about logistics. Sorry, just go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, going the flow. I won't.
Okay. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much for the class. We both will leave. Now, we came to Houston for the temple opening here. So, we'll just take your leave now.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, Matthew, please convey. Please pray for all of us.
Sure, sir.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Mataji and Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Gandharva Mataji, you can go ahead. Mataji, you cannot hear you actually. At least I'm not able to hear.
How about now?
Now it's good. Yeah, I can hear you.
I'm not sure if it's okay, clear, Prabhu, or is it still
No,
little...
it's clear, Mataji.
Okay. Prabhuji, thank you very much. And I got the summary of the chapter in such a wonderful manner. I really like the point how Krishna consciousness is so deep that in this world, the attraction between man and women is the topmost thing that can pull us down. But in the spiritual world, their love for Krishna is so deep that they don't get attracted towards the opposite sex. So I was really stunned by hearing that because it gives lots of hope because all these things can attract us and keep us away from Krishna consciousness. And also the point of how the ladies of Vaikuntha serve, they even though there is no dust, they just
Mm.
serve Krishna just to attract his attention. So these points, like it really, as Govind Charan Prabhu felt like it took us to the place for a few moments. Thank you very much for sharing, Prabhu. I don't have any specific questions for now, which proves that I didn't read the chapter deeply. But thank you for summarizing. And if there are, when I read, I'll send you across your way, the questions. Thank you.
So, thank you so much, Madhu, for nice comments.
Hare
Yeah.
Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Babuji. Yes, Prabhu.
Sorry Prabhu, can I go next?
Yes, please, please.
Thank you Prabhu for wonderful presentation, and you are trying to go through each and every purport and made nice points. I I had a comment and a question. But in verse 23 it is mentioned that we are very fortunate to hear the Vaikuntha all descriptions, because the unfortunate people will be in the darkness if they don't hear about this Vaikuntha world descriptions. And also in general people discuss about political things, as the elections comes up, people discuss about the political events but not the Vaikuntha world.
Yes,
That's a comment. And the question is like, Vaikuntha worlds means it includes all the planets of the spiritual world, or it's like, I wanted to understand that as Samipya, Sarupya, we have those kinds of liberation, right? So because there is a Vaikuntha planet, we say it's all like Sarupya, same as like Vishnu form, or it includes the planet of Goloka, Vrindavana and all those things also.
Puji, so here, like there are many, from other sources we know, like there are many Vaikuntha planets, and this is a description of one of the Vaikuntha planet. I mean, his guy Shivashmandit Prabhu can comment here, but I'm just telling, like my understanding is like it's not about Goloka Vrindavan because the four-handed Lord Vishnu form is mentioned here, and all the other resident of Vaikuntha had the same bodily feature. They also had the four-handed form, although
Yeah.
they don't have the Shivatsa mark, and like yeah, there is a distinction, but still they had the four-handed form. So it's one of the Vaikuntha planet. Not sure which Vaikuntha planet, but yeah, seems like it's not Golok Vrindavan. And the resident had the Sarupya like liberation
Yeah.
because they had the same bodily feature, and Srishti because they had the same opulence, and Samapya
But
because they had.
so like, what is the difference between each Vaikuntha world? I wanted to understand. I don't know if
Um,
it is mentioned somewhere in the purports. I was not able to go
at
through
least
all the purports.
I didn't find that in these purports, Puji.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, but there are like Padmanabha, Ananta, like this, Madhava, Ananta,
Oh,
like other. There is so many, depend. Seems like this Sangha Chakra Gada Padma, the way like the Sangha Chakra Padma are like are
different
there.
combinations.
Yeah. So the different Vaikuntha plan, but not sure which Vaikuntha. Babuji, Yashwant Babu, you want to mention comments here? Like,
So in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 21,